The champagne glass shatters. Not by accident, not by carelessness, but by the trembling hand of a woman who just heard herself reduced to a punchline in front of Manhattan's wealthiest elite. Zariah Valles doesn't flinch when the crystal explodes against marble. She watches the amber liquid spread across white stone like spilled truth. Around her, the Aurelian Meridian Hotel ballroom glitters with the kind of light that costs more than most people earn in a year. Chandeliers drip from ceilings 3 stories high. Men in custom Italian suits check their phones between bites of $70 appetizers. Women wear diamonds that could fund small nations. And standing near the marble pillar with a silver tray balanced on scarred hands, Zariah becomes invisible again. Exactly as planned. "Where are you from?" The voice cuts through polite conversation like a blade through silk. "Trent Caldera, 41, self-made cryptocurrency millionaire, host of tonight's event, and the man everyone in this room either fears or wants something from. His podcast about elite thinking has 3 million subscribers. His brand sells discipline, dominance, the illusion that money equals intelligence." He's looking directly at Zariah now. "Waiting. For many places, sir." Her voice carries the rolling vowels of West Africa. Thick, unapologetic, unmistakable. Before we continue this wonderful story, click subscribe, like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're listening from. Now let's get to where the story began. The table beside Trent erupts in polite laughter. Not loud, not cruel, just enough to let everyone know they noticed. They heard. They judged. Trent tilts his head like he's examining something curious. Well, clearly English wasn't one of them. More laughter. Sharper this time. A woman in pearls whispers to her husband. "Diversity higher." Another voice, male, barely audible. "At least she's trying." Zariah lowers her gaze. Her grip tightens on the tray. The muscles in her jaw work silently beneath dark skin that's seen more sunlight than anyone in this room will ever experience. She says nothing, does nothing, becomes smaller in a space designed to make people like her disappear. But her silence isn't submission. It's observation. Because what Trent Caldera doesn't know, what none of them know, is that Zariah Valles once negotiated ceasefire terms between rival logistics syndicates in Lagos. That she translated mineral rights contracts across 3 continents. That she walked away from a diplomatic career at the African Union because she got tired of watching powerful men destroy countries they couldn't pronounce. What they don't know is that she has degrees from institutions most people in this ballroom applied to and got rejected from. What they definitely don't know is why she's really here tonight. Trent turns back to his guests, already forgetting her. He launches into another story about disrupting traditional finance. About how the old guard doesn't understand crypto. About how innovation requires ruthlessness. His audience nods. They always nod. Zariah moves through the crowd like water between stones. She refills glasses. She clears plates. She listens to conversations conducted in 6 different languages. She watches deals being made with handshakes and eye contact. She sees the future of American industry being decided over cocktails and coded language. And she takes notes. Mental ones. Because in 4 hours, she'll file a report that will either greenlight or destroy a multi-billion-dollar rare earth extraction deal. The kind of deal that determines who controls lithium, cobalt, and tantalum. The minerals that power phones, electric vehicles, and defense systems. The resources that West African nations sit on while Western corporations circle like sharks. Trent wants in on that deal. Badly. But the investors, the real ones, the ones from Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and Morocco, they don't trust him. They find him aggressive, culturally tone-deaf, dangerous in ways that have nothing to do with money and everything to do with respect. So they hired someone to assess him, someone who could blend in. Listen, watch, evaluate whether Trent Caldera possesses the emotional intelligence necessary to operate in sovereign partnerships without destroying alliances. They hired Zariah. But Trent doesn't know that. He's too busy performing. Near the bar, a tech founder from Silicon Valley corners him. Trent, man, loved your last podcast. The one about cutting dead weight from your network. Appreciate it. Trent accepts the compliment like it's oxygen. You gotta be ruthless about who gets your time. Energy vampires everywhere. Facts. The founder glances at Zariah as she passes. Lowers his voice. Speaking of which, you think they'd send someone who can actually speak properly to an event like this? Trent laughs. Actually laughs. And that laugh, casual, careless, cruel, gets recorded. Not by Zariah. By a junior associate from a venture capital firm standing 3 feet away with his phone angled just right. He's been waiting for something like this. Something authentic. Something that reveals what people really think when they believe only their tribe is listening. He uploads it to a private finance Twitter circle. 37 people see it in the first minute. 205 minutes. Within 10 minutes, it's been screen recorded and shared to 3 different Slack channels for Black professionals in finance. Trent doesn't notice. He's moved on to another conversation, another performance, another moment of feeling untouchable. But across the ballroom, near the tall windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, 3 foreign investors exchange glances. The Moroccan delegate, Idris Benani, sets down his wine glass. The Senegalese investor, Aminata Diallo, checks her phone. The representative from Côte d'Ivoire, Kouassi Yao, says quietly in French, "This is concerning." And Zariah, standing perfectly still with her empty tray, meets Idris's eyes for exactly 2 seconds. He nods. She nods back. The evaluation has begun. What would you do if someone mocked the way you speak in front of the most powerful people in the room? The notification sounds like a swarm of digital bees. Trent's phone buzzes once, then again, then continuously until he pulls it from his pocket and sees 37 unread messages in his private Signal group, the one reserved for founders, investors, and people who matter. He's standing near the dessert table when he opens the first message. It's a video of him laughing. Well, clearly English wasn't one of them. His own voice. His own words, captured in perfect clarity. The caption reads, "Elite thinking or just regular bigotry?" Trent's chest tightens. His jaw locks. Around him, the ballroom continues its polished dance of networking and champagne, but he feels the air shift. Phones are coming out. Eyes are finding him. Conversations are pausing mid-sentence. Everything okay? A woman from a hedge fund appears at his elbow. Her tone suggests she already knows the answer. It's nothing. Trent locks his phone, forces his face into neutrality. Just trolls doing troll things. But it's not nothing. In the corner of the room, a financial journalist pulls up Twitter. The clip has already jumped platforms. Someone edited it with text overlays. This is who wants access to African resources. Another version adds dramatic music. A third cuts to footage of the Maid, Zariah, her face calm, her posture dignified, her silence suddenly louder than any response. Trent watches his notifications multiply. His publicist calls. He declines. His business partner texts. He ignores it. His head of communications sends an urgent Slack message with 3 fire emojis and the words "Call me now." He doesn't call. Instead, he does what powerful men always do when caught. He doubles down. Trent walks to the center of the ballroom, raises his voice just enough to command attention without seeming desperate. "Can I get everyone's focus for a second?" The room quiets. Faces turn toward him. Some curious, some already knowing what's coming. "I've been made aware that someone recorded a private conversation and shared it online." He pauses. Lets that sink in. "Let me be clear, it was a joke. A poorly timed one, maybe, but a joke nonetheless. Anyone who knows me knows I value diversity. I've donated to literacy programs in 12 countries. I've mentored entrepreneurs from marginalized communities." He scans the crowd for validation. A few nods, mostly from people who need him for deals. But the foreign investors aren't nodding. Aminata Diallo, the Senegalese investor, watches him with the expression of someone evaluating livestock. Kawasi Yao whispers something to Idris Benani in rapid French. Idris responds without breaking eye contact with Trent, and Zaraya, still holding her tray near the marble pillar, listens to every word of their French conversation. Il ne comprend pas, Aminata says quietly. He doesn't understand. Il ne comprendra jamais, Kawasi replies. He never will. Idris adds, La question n'est pas est-il plaisantate. C'est pourquoi il pensait que c'était drôle. The question isn't whether he was joking. It's why he thought it was funny. Trent continues his defense, unaware that he's being dissected in a language he doesn't speak. Look, I get it. Optics matter. Sensitivity matters. But let's not pretend that one offhand comment defines a person's entire character. Someone in the back shouts, maybe it does. Trent's eyes snap toward the voice. A young black woman in a blazer. Associate at Goldman. He doesn't know her name, but recognizes the look. The one that says I've been waiting for this moment. Excuse me. Trent's voice sharpens. I said maybe it does define character. She steps forward. Phone still in hand. Maybe the things we say when we think nobody important is listening reveal exactly who we are. The room holds its breath. Trent opens his mouth, closes it. His PR training kicks in. Don't engage. Don't escalate. Don't give them more content. I appreciate your perspective, he says carefully, but I'm not going to let social media mob mentality dictate how I run my life or my business. He turns away. Conversation resumes. But the damage is done. By the time dessert is served, the clip has 15,000 views. By the time coffee arrives, it's 30,000. Influencers are stitching it. LinkedIn thought leaders are writing hot takes. A former diversity consultant who worked with Trent's company 6 years ago posts a thread about warning signs she ignored. Trent's mentions fill with fire, with anger, with gleeful schadenfreude from people who've been waiting for someone like him to fall. But he's not falling yet. He's still standing, still hosting, still pretending everything is fine. Until Idris Benani approaches him near the bar. Mr. Caldera. Idris's English is perfect. His accent carries the weight of French colonial education and Pan-African pride. May I have a word? Trent shifts into business mode. Of course. What can I do for you? You can help me understand something. Idris gestures toward the crowd, toward Zaraya, who's collecting empty glasses near the window. That woman, the one you spoke to earlier. Do you know who she is? Trent glances at Zaraya. Shrugs. Staff, I assume. What? Just curious. Idris smiles. It doesn't reach his eyes. Sometimes the people we dismiss carry more value than we realize. I didn't dismiss anyone. No. Idris tilts his head. Then what would you call it? The question hangs between them like a blade. Trent feels his pulse quicken, feels the conversation slipping out of his control. Look, if this is about that video, this is about respect, Mr. Caldera. Idris's voice remains calm, surgical, and whether you understand that respect is not a Western concept. It is universal. It is foundational. I respect. Do you? Idris doesn't wait for an answer. Because from where I stand, you respect power. You respect wealth. You respect people who look and sound like you. But respect as a principle, as a discipline, I am not convinced. Trent's jaw tightens. With all due respect. There it is again. Idris smiles. With all due respect. As if respect is something you measure and distribute based on status. Before Trent can respond, Aminata and Kawasi join them. 3 investors. 3 nations. 3 people whose approval he needs to close the biggest deal of his career. We have concerns, Aminata says simply. About. Trent tries to sound casual. Fails. About tonight. Kawasi gestures toward the room. Toward the phones. Toward the evidence spreading across the internet like wildfire. About how you handle pressure. About who you become when you think the cameras are off. One clip doesn't. One clip reveals everything. Aminata interrupts. We are not here to judge your heart, Mr. Caldera. We are here to assess your capacity. And tonight, you have shown us exactly what we needed to see. Trent feels the floor shifting beneath him. I can explain. We will decide tonight, Idris says quietly. The three investors walk away, and Trent stands alone at the bar, surrounded by hundreds of people, feeling smaller than he's ever felt in his life. Across the room, Zariah sets down her tray. She pulls a small leather notebook from her apron pocket and begins to write. Have you ever watched someone destroy their own future in real time? The rare earth deposits sit beneath West African soil like buried gods. Lithium, cobalt, tantalum, neodymium. Elements most Americans can't pronounce, but depend on every single day. The minerals inside phones, laptops, electric vehicle batteries, wind turbines, and military-grade electronics. The resources that determine which nations lead and which nations follow in the race toward technological dominance. China controls 70% of global rare earth processing. The United States controls less than 3%. In West Africa, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Mali, Burkina Faso sits on deposits worth an estimated $400 billion. That's why tonight matters. That's why Trent Caldera flew investors in from 3 continents. That's why the Department of Defense has quiet observers stationed throughout this ballroom, pretending to be venture capitalists. That's why Zariah Valles is here. Because this isn't just about money. It's about sovereignty, supply chains, national security, the ability to manufacture advanced technology without begging China for materials. And the investors from West Africa know exactly what they hold. They've watched foreign corporations strip their countries for centuries. Diamonds, gold, cocoa, oil, timber, every resource extracted and shipped away while local populations remained poor, while infrastructure crumbled, while profit flowed to London, Paris, New York, and Beijing. Not this time. This time, they want partnerships. Real ones. The kind where African nations maintain control, where processing happens locally, where jobs and wealth stay in communities that mine the materials. They want respect, and they hired Zariah to determine if Trent Caldera is capable of delivering it. She stands near the service hallway now, away from the crowd, reviewing her mental notes. The evaluation framework is simple but comprehensive. 7 categories, each scored from 1 to 10. Cultural intelligence. Does he understand the historical context of extraction in Africa? Does he recognize post-colonial sensitivities? Can he navigate conversations without triggering trauma? Current score, 2. Communication style. Does he listen more than he speaks? Does he ask questions or make assumptions? Does he adapt his language to his audience? Current score, 3. Emotional regulation. How does he handle criticism? Does he deflect or reflect? Does he become defensive when challenged? Current score, 1. Cross-cultural competence. Can he operate in multilingual environments? Does he value linguistic diversity or view it as inconvenient? Current score, 0. Zariah doesn't need to finish the evaluation. She already knows the answer. But protocol requires documentation. Evidence. A paper trail that protects the investors from accusations of bias or discrimination. So she continues watching, listening, recording. Inside the ballroom, Trent has regrouped. He's cornered a deputy assistant secretary from the Department of Commerce. Someone who can validate him. Someone whose presence suggests federal approval. Sarah, you know me. Trent's voice carries just enough volume to be overheard by nearby guests. I've been working on African partnerships for 3 years. I've built relationships. I've earned trust. Sarah Martinez, 46, career diplomat, offers a smile that gives away nothing. I'm sure you have, Trent. So you'll put in a good word with the investors? That's not really my role here. But you understand the strategic importance of this deal. For the country. For supply chain resilience. I understand many things. Sarah's tone remains pleasant. Neutral. Including the importance of cultural competence in international negotiations. Trent's face tightens. Are you seriously? I'm not seriously anything. Sarah touches his arm gently. I'm simply observing that success in global partnerships requires more than capital. It requires humility. She walks away before he can respond. And Trent realizes, perhaps for the first time tonight, that he's losing. Not just the deal, but the room. People are watching him differently now. Conversations pause when he approaches. Smiles feel thinner. Handshakes lack warmth. The social currency he spent years accumulating is deflating in real time. Near the tall windows, the three primary investors sit together at a private table. They speak in French. Rapid, animated. Zoraya positions herself close enough to hear without being obvious. Il n'a aucune conscience, Aminata says. He has no awareness. Pierre, Kawasi adds. Worse. Il ne pense pas qu'il en a besoin. He doesn't think he needs any. Idris leans back in his chair. Studies the room. La question maintenant est, recommandens nous de poursuivre avec des conditions strictes, ou simplement de partir? The question now is, do we recommend proceeding with strict conditions, or simply walk away? Des conditions ne changeront pas qu'il est, Aminata replies. Conditions won't change who he is. They fall silent as a waiter approaches. It's not Zoraya. It's a young white man in his 20s. Nervous. Eager to please. Can I get you anything? He asks in English. Non, merci, Idris responds. The waiter lingers. Sorry, I don't. He said no thank you. Zoraya appears from nowhere. Her voice is soft, professional. She addresses the waiter in English, then turns to the investors. Messers, pardonnez l'interruption. Puis-je vous offer quelque chose? Gentlemen, forgive the interruption. May I offer you anything? All three investors look up. Really look up. At her. For the first time tonight, Aminata's expression shifts. Vous parlez français? You speak French? Oui, madame. Zoraya's accent is flawless. Parisian. The kind that comes from years of formal study and practical application. Et plusieurs autres langues, si nécessaire. And several other languages, if necessary. Kawasi exchanges a glance with Idris. Something unspoken passes between them. Interessant, Idris murmurs. Interesting. Zoraya maintains her neutral expression. Voulez-vous que je transmette un message à quelqu'un? Would you like me to pass a message to anyone? Non, Aminata says slowly. Mais merci. No, but thank you. Zoraya nods. Begins to turn away. Attendas, Idris calls softly. Wait. She stops. Comment vous appelez-vous? What is your name? Zoraya Vallis. Et vous travaillez ici depuis combien de temps? And how long have you worked here? Ce soir seulement, monsieur. Tonight only, sir. The three investors process this information. Aminata's eyes narrow slightly. Vous eats. You are? Zoraya allows herself the smallest smile. Précisément là où je dois être. Exactly where I need to be. She walks away before they can ask more questions. But the seed is planted. The investors know something just shifted. Across the room, Trent watches this exchange without understanding a single word. He sees Zoraya speaking, sees the investors engaged, sees their body language change from closed to open, and he feels something he hasn't felt in years. Fear. Not the kind that comes from losing money. The kind that comes from realizing you've been playing a game whose rules you never bothered to learn. His phone buzzes again. Another notification. The video now has 80,000 views. Someone created a hashtag. Hashtag Elite Thinking Exposed. A Forbes contributor just published a think piece titled, When Disruption Culture Meets Colonial Mindsets. And in exactly 90 minutes, the investors will announce their decision. Trent drains his scotch, orders another, and watches Zoraya move through the crowd like she owns every language spoken in the room. What happens when the person you dismissed knows more than everyone you're trying to impress? The French conversation happens fast, too fast for the hired translators to catch. Trent sits at the negotiation table surrounded by documents he hasn't read carefully enough, flanked by lawyers who bill $800 an hour, facing three investors whose patience has expired. Le problème principal, Kawasi begins, c'est la structure de gouvernance. Nous ne pouvons pas accepter un modèle où les décisions opérationnelles sont prises sans consultation locale. The main problem is the governance structure. We cannot accept a model where operational decisions are made without local consultation. Aminata nods sharply. Et la question de propriété intellectuelle reste non résolue. Si la tecnologia de extraction est developpée inutilisant nos resources, cadicient les brevets. And the question of intellectual property remains unresolved. If extraction technology is developed using our resources, who holds the patents? Idris adds, sans parler de préoccupations environnementales. Les communautés locales ont déjà subi trop de dommages causés par l'exploitation minière irresponsible. Not to mention environmental concerns. Local communities have already suffered too much damage from irresponsible mining. The translators scramble to keep up. One stumbles over propriet intellectual. Another mistranslates preoccupations environmentales as environmental preferences instead of environmental concerns. Trent, who speaks exactly one language fluently and considers that sufficient, waves his hand dismissively. Look, I hear your concerns. But let's be realistic. The technology, the capital, the expertise, that's all coming from our side. We're taking the risk here. We need protections. The translator repeats this in French. All three investors stiffen. Protections contre quoi? Aminata's voice drops to ice. Protections against what? The translator hesitates. Looks at Trent. Trent doesn't catch the shift in tone. Against political instability. Regulatory changes. Nationalization. The usual risks when operating in developing markets. The translator opens his mouth. Zoraya appears before he can speak. She's carrying a fresh tray of water glasses, but her presence interrupts the momentum. Pardonnez-moi, she says quietly. Je per clarifier? Forgive me. May I clarify? Everyone turns. Trent blinks. Excuse me. Zoraya addresses the investors directly in French. Je crois qu'il un erreur de traduction. Ce que Monsieur Caldera essaie d'exprimer concerne les garanties contractuelles standard, pas en méfiance envers vos governments. I believe there was a translation error. What Mr. Caldera is trying to express concerns standard contractual guarantees, not distrust of your governments. She pauses. Cependant, she continues, le choix de ses mots, marches in development, any reflete pas la sophistication de vos cadres réglementaires actuals. However, his choice of words, developing markets, does not reflect the sophistication of your current regulatory frameworks. The room goes silent. Trent stares at her. What did you just? She corrected your translator. Idris says in English. His expression is unreadable. And you? I don't understand. Non. Aminata agrees in English. You do not. Kawasi leans forward. Mademoiselle, vous travaillez pour el hotel? Miss, you work for the hotel? Ce soir, oui, Zoraya responds. Tonight, yes. Et avant ce soir. And before tonight? Zoraya sets down her tray. Meets his gaze directly. Je travaille dans de contextes similaires. Souvent entrée de parties que ne comprennent pas aussi bien qu'elles le pensent. I have worked in similar contexts, often between parties who do not understand each other as well as they think. Something passes between them. Recognition. Trent feels the ground shifting beneath him again. Someone want to fill me in on what's happening? What's happening, Idris says slowly, is that we are discovering more about you in one evening than 3 years of emails revealed. That's not. You interrupted a French conversation, Aminata cuts in, and assumed we were criticizing your competitors. Trent's face flushes. I didn't assume. You did. Kawasi's tone is factual, not angry. Worse, disappointed. You assumed that anything said in a language you do not speak must be either irrelevant or hostile. That's a huge leap. Is it? Idris gestures towards Zoraya. This woman just prevented a complete breakdown in communication. She understood both what we said and what you meant. She bridged a gap you didn't even know existed. Trent looks at Zoraya for the first time with something resembling attention. Who are you? Someone who listens, she replies in English. Her accent is still there, still present, but somehow it sounds different now. Not thick, not unapologetic, authoritative. Before Trent can respond, another investor arrives at the table, a Chinese representative from a competing consortium. He speaks rapidly in Mandarin to his assistant. Zaraya turns slightly. Nin sorta jaga balkoa chuli, Sir Shrima? She asks, does the price you mentioned include processing facilities? The Chinese investor freezes mid-sentence, stares at her. Nin hui soa zhongwan. You speak Mandarin? Zhuge jingxing sangwu duryawa, Zaraya responds. Enough for business conversation. She then switches to Portuguese, addressing a Brazilian mining consultant standing nearby. EOS custos de transporte? Forum calculados na proposta. And transportation costs? Were they calculated in the proposal? The consultant's eyes widen. Then she shifts to Spanish, speaking to a Chilean lithium expert. Las proyecciones incluyen fluctuaciones del mercado? Do the projections include market fluctuations? Each question is precise, technical, informed. The ballroom transforms around her. People who ignored her now lean in. Translators who dismissed her now step back. And Trent Caldera, millionaire podcaster, cryptocurrency expert, self-proclaimed elite thinker, realizes he's been operating in a room he doesn't understand with tools he doesn't possess. How many languages do you speak? The question escapes him before he can stop it. Zaraya turns back to him. Enough to know when someone is being lied to. Enough to recognize when someone is lying to themselves. That's not an answer. Neither was your response to our concerns about governance. Aminata interjects. The meeting derails. Questions become accusations. Clarifications become confrontations. Trent tries to regain control, but every time he speaks, the translators hesitate. Every time he makes a point, someone asks Zaraya to verify it. Every time he pivots, the investors exchange glances that suggest they've seen enough. By the time the session ends, no progress has been made. No agreements reached. No ground recovered. The investors stand. Thank everyone politely. Leave without committing to next steps. And Trent sits alone at the table, surrounded by lawyers who won't meet his eyes and documents he never fully understood. Zaraya collects empty water glasses, wipes down the table, moves toward the service exit. Wait. Trent's voice stops her. She turns. Who sent you? No one sent me. That's impossible. You're too prepared. Too informed. This wasn't random. Zaraya sets down her tray. You are right about one thing, Mr. Caldera. This was not random. Then what? I volunteered. For what? She doesn't answer directly. Instead, she asks, do you know what rare earth elements are used for? Of course. Batteries. Electronics. Defense systems. And do you know which communities mine them? Trent hesitates. Do you know what happens to those communities after the minerals are extracted? Silence. Do you know their languages? Their governments? Their histories? That's what consultants are for. Zaraya nods slowly. Yes, consultants like me. She walks away, and Trent sits in the wreckage of his evening, finally understanding that the woman he mocked holds more power in this room than he ever will. What do you do when you realize the person you underestimated was never beneath you at all? The shift happens without announcement. One moment, Zaraya is staff, invisible, background. The next, she's the axis everything revolves around. It starts with the Moroccan delegate. Idris approaches her near the dessert table and speaks quietly in Arabic. Are you here to evaluate us or him? Zaraya responds without hesitation. Both. But only one knows he's being evaluated. Idris's expression doesn't change, but something in his posture relaxes. And what have you found so far? That arrogance and ignorance speak the same language. He almost smiles. Almost. Then switches to French. Vous travaillez pour que exactement? You work for whom exactly? Pour les gens qui ont le plus à perdre, she answers. For the people who have the most to lose. Les investisseurs ou les communautés. The investors or the communities. SCHYLYAN difference. Is there a difference? This time Idris does smile. Non. ILNYN. No, there isn't. He returns to his table and speaks quietly to Aminata and Kawasi. Their eyes find Zaraya across the room, not with suspicion, with something closer to relief. Meanwhile, Trent watches from the bar. He can't hear the conversation, can't understand the languages, but he reads the body language perfectly. The way Idris leans in, the way Aminata's shoulders drop from defensive to open, the way Kawasi nods slowly, like pieces of a puzzle are finally clicking into place. You look stressed. A venture capitalist appears beside Trent. Marcus Chun, 43, Stanford MBA, portfolio worth $200 million. Just processing, Trent mutters. Processing what? That your maid speaks more languages than your entire executive team. Trent's jaw tightens. She's not my maid. Right? My bad. Marcus takes a sip of bourbon. She's your judge. What's that supposed to mean? Come on, man. You really think she's here to serve drinks? Marcus gestures subtly towards Araya. That woman just corrected translators in 4 languages, asked technical questions about supply chain logistics, and quote-checked a Brazilian mining consultant's financial projections. You think the hotel hired her for that skill set? Trent says nothing. She's an evaluator. Marcus continues. The investors brought her in to assess whether you can handle cross-cultural partnerships. And from where I'm standing, you're failing spectacularly. That's insane. Is it? Because I just watched her save your negotiation from complete collapse. She corrected your translator's mistake about intellectual property rights. She reframed your comment about developing markets before the investors walked out. She did more to keep your deal alive in 5 minutes than you did all night. Trent's phone buzzes. Another notification. The video has passed 200,000 views. Someone created a TikTok with the clip set to audio that says, "The audacity." A prominent DEI consultant quote tweeted it with, "And this is why representation in evaluation matters." Who watches The Watchmen? Marcus sees the screen. Brutal. It's being blown out of proportion. Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly the right proportion and you're just seeing it clearly for the first time. Before Trent can respond, Zaraya approaches the bar. Both men go silent. She addresses the bartender in Spanish. "Puedo tener agua con gas, por favor? May I have sparkling water, please?" The bartender, a young Colombian woman, lights up. "Claro que sí. ¿De dónde eres?" "Of course. Where are you from?" They exchange a few rapid sentences. Zaraya learns the bartender is from Bogota. The bartender learns Zaraya once worked in Cartagena. They laugh about something related to traffic and taxis. It's effortless, human, real. Trent watches this interaction and feels something crack inside him. Not anger, envy. Because Zaraya moves through languages the way he moves through business deals. Naturally, confidently, without needing to prove anything. She collects her sparkling water and turns to leave. "Wait," Trent says. Zaraya pauses. "Can we talk?" "We are talking. Privately." She considers this. "Why?" "Because I think I owe you an apology." Marcus raises his eyebrows, but says nothing. Zaraya studies Trent for a long moment. "You think you owe me one, or you know you do?" "I know I do. And if I accept it, does that make you feel better or actually change anything?" The question lands like a punch. Trent opens his mouth, closes it, realizes he doesn't have an answer that won't make things worse. Zaraya's expression softens slightly, not with forgiveness, with something closer to pity. "Mr. Caldera, I have been mocked in 7 languages. I have been dismissed in more countries than you have visited. Your apology is not unique. What would be unique is if you understood why you felt entitled to make that joke in the first place." "I didn't feel entitled." "You did." Her voice remains calm, professional. "You felt entitled to judge my competence based on my accent, to measure my intelligence by how much I sound like you, to treat me as scenery in a room you believed you controlled. That's not fair. Neither is being reduced to a punchline in front of people whose approval I need to do my job effectively." Trent blinks. "Your job?" Zaraya sets down her water glass, removes her service gloves, reaches into her apron, and pulls out a leather-bound credential folder. Opens it, hands it to Trent. He reads, and his face goes pale. Zaraya Valles, Ph.D. Senior Consultant, Cross-Cultural Risk Assessment Specialization, Sovereign Resource Partnerships Languages, French, Arabic, Portuguese, Spanish, Mandarin, Wolof, Swahili, English. Retained by Pan-African Investment Consortium Assignment. Cultural Intelligence Evaluation, Aurelian Meridian Event Authorization Level. Final Recommendation Authority. Trent's hands shake slightly as he closes the folder. Marcus Chun, still standing nearby, lets out a low whistle. Holy shit. Zariah takes back her credentials. I was prepared to recommend conditional approval 3 hours ago. Your technical team is competent. Your financial projections are reasonable. Your infrastructure partnerships are solid. She pauses. But respect is not conditional, Mr. Caldera. It is foundational. And you revealed tonight that you view it as something you grant to people after they prove themselves worthy, not something you extend as baseline humanity. I can change. Perhaps. But that change should not be motivated by the fear of losing a deal. It should be motivated by recognizing that people's dignity does not depend on your recognition of it. She picks up her water, begins to walk away. Wait, Trent calls. Desperation creeping into his voice now. What happens next? Zariah stops, turns, looks him directly in the eyes. Next, I finish my report. I submit my recommendation to the investment consortium, and they make their decision. And what are you going to recommend? She tilts her head slightly. What do you think I should recommend, Mr. Caldera? He has no answer. She nods. That is the problem. Zariah walks across the ballroom, passing the investors' table. Aminata catches her eye, mouths 2 words in French. Merci beaucoup. Zariah nods once, and disappears into the crowd. Trent stands at the bar, holding his phone where notifications continue to multiply, surrounded by Manhattan's elite, architect of his own collapse. Marcus finishes his bourbon. For what it's worth, he says quietly, I think she just gave you more grace than you deserved. He leaves Trent alone, and across the room, 3 investors pull out their phones, begin typing messages to their respective boards. The decision is already made. Trent just doesn't know it yet. How much power does one person's silence hold when they finally choose to speak? The gloves come off like a declaration of war. Not literal war. The quiet kind. The kind that happens in boardrooms and ballrooms when someone stops pretending to be small. Zariah sets the white service gloves on the marble table between herself and 3 investors who've been waiting all night for this exact moment. Madame Vallis. The Moroccan delegate speaks first. His voice carries weight now. Not the polite distance from earlier. Real recognition. Nous Samirians entendre votre evaluation. We would like to hear your evaluation. Zariah doesn't sit, doesn't soften her posture. Vous voulez la version diplomatique ou la vérité? Do you want the diplomatic version or the truth? Aminata smiles. Actually smiles. La vérité. Toujours. The truth. Always. Monsieur Caldera possède le capital. Il possède l'expertise technique. Il possède means certain spawn's intentions. Zariah's French flows without effort. Mais il ne possède pas le respect. Et sans respect, tout le reste s'effondre. Mr. Caldera has the capital. He has the technical expertise. He even has some good intentions. But he does not have respect. And without respect, everything else collapses. Kouassi leans forward. Recommandez-vous que nous retirions complètement? Do you recommend we withdraw completely? Zariah pauses. This is the moment. The one that determines whether billions of dollars flow or stop. Whether American supply chains strengthen or remain vulnerable. Whether communities in West Africa gain partnership or face another extraction scheme. Je recommand. She begins slowly. Que vous considérez si vous voulez un partenaire que apprendre après avoir écu. Ou un partenaire que n'a jamais eu besoin d'être pour comprendre. I recommend that you consider whether you want a partner who learns after failing, or a partner who never needed to fail to understand. The distinction lands. Idris nods. Et Monsieur Caldera. Dans quelle category tum-til? And Mr. Caldera, which category does he fall into? Ce soir, Zariah meets his eyes. Il écu. La question est, peut-il apprendre? Ou va-t-il simplement guérir la perception de l'échec? Tonight? He failed. The question is, can he learn? Or will he simply manage the perception of failure? Across the ballroom, Trent can't hear the conversation, but he sees it. Sees Zariah standing where staff should never stand. Sees investors listening like she's the only voice that matters. Sees his entire future being decided in a language he never bothered to learn. His publicist calls again. This time he answers. Trent, we need damage control. Now. Her voice is sharp. Professional panic. The video hit mainstream Twitter. It's on LinkedIn. Someone sent it to the Times. I have 3 interview requests from business journalists asking about your diversity initiatives. Tell them. Tell them what? That it was a joke? That you have black friends? That you donate to charity? She doesn't wait for him to answer. None of that matters anymore. What matters is whether you can show actual change or just perform regret. I can. Can you, though? The question is genuine, not rhetorical. Because I've been doing this for 15 years, and I can tell the difference between clients who get it and clients who get caught. Which one are you? Trent has no answer. She continues. The investors are meeting in 20 minutes to make their final decision. If they walk, every outlet will cover it. If they stay, they'll demand conditions that reshape how you operate. Either way, your brand changes tonight. The only question is whether you control that change or it controls you. She hangs up. Trent looks at his phone, at the video still spreading, at the comments piling up, at his carefully constructed image cracking in real time. A notification appears, a direct message, from someone he hasn't spoken to in 6 years. Deshaun Harris, former COO of Trent's first startup. Black. Brilliant. Fired after pushing back on Trent's leadership style. The message is short. I tried to tell you. You didn't listen then either. Trent deletes it without responding. But the words stick. Back at the investors' table, Zariah is finishing her evaluation. Voici ma recommandation officielle. She pulls out a tablet. Types rapidly. Approbation conditionnel. Les conditions incluent. Un conseil consultatif local avec pouvoir de veto sur les décisions opérationnelles. Audits environnementaux indépendants. Programmes de formation linguistique obligatoires pour out le personnel de direction. Here is my official recommendation. Conditional approval. Conditions include a local advisory board with veto power over operational decisions. Independent environmental audits. Mandatory language training programs for all executive staff. She pauses. Etienne chose de plus. And one more thing. The investors wait. Monsieur Caldera doit passer 6 mois à travailler sur le terrain. Pas dans les bureaux. Pas dans les salles de conférence. Dans les communautés qui seront affectées par ce projet. Mr. Caldera must spend 6 months working in the field. Not in offices. Not in conference rooms. In the communities that will be affected by this project. Aminata's eyebrows rise. 6 mois. 6 months? Minimum. Il doit comprendre que paye le vrai prix de l'extraction. Minimum. He must understand who pays the real price of extraction. Kawasi exchanges a glance with Idris. Say, inhabitual. Kawasi says carefully. That's unusual. Oui. Zariah doesn't blink. Mais l'arrogance est aussi inhabituelle pour réussir dans ce genre de partenariat. Yes, but arrogance is also unusual for success in this kind of partnership. Idris sits back, studies her. Vous savez que ces conditions vont probablement le faire abandoner. You know these conditions will likely make him walk away. Alors il n'était jamais vraiment engagé. Then he was never truly committed. Silence falls over the table. Then Aminata speaks. Envoyez le rapport. Send the report. Zariah taps her screen. The evaluation transmits. To 12 board members across 3 continents. To government liaisons in 4 African nations. To Department of Defense observers monitoring American mineral security. To people whose decisions will reshape supply chains for the next decade. And in that report, buried in professional language and diplomatic phrasing, is a single devastating sentence. Subject demonstrates technical competence, but lacks the foundational cross-cultural intelligence required for sovereign partnership success. Recommend conditional approval with mandatory remediation or alternative consortium consideration. Translation: he can learn or he can leave. 5 minutes later, Trent's phone rings. Not his publicist this time. His lead investor. The one who brought him into this deal. The one whose reputation rides on Trent's success. "We have a problem," the investor says without preamble. "I know about the video." This isn't about the video anymore. This is about the evaluation. Trent's stomach drops. What evaluation? The one the African investors commissioned. The cultural intelligence assessment. The report just came through. And you failed. The word hangs in the air like smoke. Failed. Not needs improvement. Not requires adjustment. Failed. That's impossible, Trent says. I've been working on this deal for 3 years. I've built relationships. You built transactions, the investor interrupts. Not relationships. And the evaluator made that very clear. Who is this evaluator? The woman you mocked at the beginning of the night. Trent closes his eyes. They're offering conditional approval. The investor continues. But the conditions are significant. How significant? 6 months in West Africa. On the ground. In mining communities. Plus mandatory advisory oversight. Plus independent audits. Plus language training for your entire executive team. That's insane. That's the offer. Take it, or they move to the backup consortium. There's a backup consortium? There's always a backup consortium. Trent feels the room spinning. I need time to think. You have 20 minutes. They're announcing their decision at midnight. The call ends. Trent stands alone in a ballroom full of people, surrounded by success he's losing, holding a phone that keeps delivering worse news. And across the room, Zariah Valles picks up her service gloves, puts them back on, returns to being invisible, not because she has to, because her work is done. What would you sacrifice to learn a lesson you should have known all along? The announcement doesn't come from the investors. It comes from Twitter. A financial journalist breaks the news at 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the official deadline. Breaking: Pan-African Investment Consortium issues conditional approval for Caldera Rare Earth Partnership. Sources say unprecedented oversight requirements imposed after cultural intelligence evaluation. More to follow. The tweet gets retweeted 400 times in 3 minutes. Screenshots flood LinkedIn. Industry Slack channels explode. Someone finds Zariah's professional profile and shares it with the caption, "This is who evaluated him." 6 languages. 3 degrees. Former AU diplomatic liaison. She wasn't serving drinks. She was serving justice. That post goes viral faster than the original video. Trent watches it happen in real time. Watches his failure become entertainment. Watches people celebrate his humiliation like it's a public service. His mentions fill with think pieces. When meritocracy meets actual merit. The audacity of mediocre men who think accents equal intelligence. Why cultural competence isn't optional in global business. A former colleague from Stanford Business School posts, "Remember when Trent said international partnerships were just American business with translators?" Guess he found out. 300 likes in 5 minutes. His phone rings again. Different investor this time. Smaller stake, but louder voice. "I'm pulling out." No greeting. No preamble. "Wait. I can't be associated with this. My LP base is too diverse. They're already asking questions." The deal is still happening. Under conditions that make you look incompetent. Which makes me look incompetent for backing you. I'm out. Click. 2 minutes later, another call. Another investor withdrawing. Then another. Not all of them. The deal is still alive. But the coalition is fracturing. The confidence is draining. The narrative is shifting from promising partnership to damage control case study. Trent finds himself in the hotel bathroom. Alone. Staring at his reflection in mirrors that cost more than most people's cars. He looks the same. Same haircut. Same suit. Same face. But everything underneath has changed. His phone buzzes. A text from his business partner. "Board meeting tomorrow. 8 a.m. Prepare to explain." Another text. His mother. "I saw the video. Call me." Another. his podcast producer. We need to talk about episode sponsorships. The bathroom door opens. Marcus Chen walks in, sees Trent, pauses. You good? Trent laughs. It sounds hollow. Do I look good? Marcus doesn't answer. Instead, he washes his hands, takes his time, finally speaks. You know what the worst part is? Enlighten me. The worst part is that woman gave you more chances than you deserved. She corrected your translators. She saved your negotiation. She could have let you crash and burn in the first hour. So why didn't she? Marcus turns off the water. Because she was evaluating whether you could learn, not whether you already knew. She was looking for capacity, not perfection. And I failed. You failed the easy test. The one where you just had to not be cruel. The words land like physical blows. So what now? Trent asks. Now you decide if you're going to actually change or just manage the optics of change. Marcus leaves. Trent stands alone in the bathroom, watching water drip from Italian marble fixtures, feeling smaller than he's ever felt in his life. Outside, the ballroom is emptying. Investors shake hands, exchange business cards, make plans for follow-up meetings that no longer include Trent in primary roles. The Senegalese delegation books flights to meet with the backup consortium. The Moroccan representative schedules a call with the Department of Commerce to discuss alternative partnerships. The Chinese investor, who watched everything, sends a memo to Beijing recommending they increase their West African engagement before American incompetence creates an opening. Soraya collects her final payment from the hotel manager, returns her uniform, changes into street clothes in the staff locker room. A young black server approaches her, nervous, holding her phone. I saw what you did out there. Soraya pauses. What did you see? You made them listen. You made them respect you. They respected themselves. I just refused to participate in their disrespect. The server nods slowly. Can I ask you something? Of course. How did you learn to do that? To speak all those languages? To just exist in spaces like this without shrinking? Soraya considers the question. I learned that my dignity doesn't depend on their recognition, and that competence doesn't need translation. She hands the server a business card. If you ever want to talk about opportunities beyond serving drinks, call me. The server stares at the card like it's a lottery ticket. Soraya leaves through the service exit, the one staff uses, the one wealthy guests never see. And as she steps into the Manhattan night, her phone rings. Unknown number. She answers. Ms. Vallis. A woman's voice. Professional. Urgent. Speaking. This is Keisha Morrison from the Department of Commerce. I was observing tonight's negotiations. I'd like to discuss a consulting opportunity. Soraya smiles. I'm listening. We have 6 other rare earth partnerships in development. After tonight, we've realized our evaluation process needs serious reform. We need someone who can assess cultural competence before deals fall apart. That sounds like a systemic problem. It is, which is why we need systemic solutions. Soraya reaches her car. A modest Honda. Not the kind of vehicle that screams success. The kind that doesn't need to. Send me the details, she says. I'll review and respond. Thank you. And Ms. Vallis. Yes. What you did tonight, that took courage. Soraya unlocks her car. No. What I did tonight took preparation. Courage is what those mining communities show every day when they negotiate with people who don't see them as human. She ends the call, drives away from the Aurelian Meridian Hotel, leaves behind a ballroom full of people still processing what happened. And somewhere in that ballroom, Trent Caldera sits at the bar, alone, holding a scotch he's not drinking, watching the ice melt, realizing that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, one conversation at a time, in languages you took the time to learn, with people you chose to see. His phone buzzes. Final notification of the night. The investors have made their announcement. The Pan-African Investment Consortium has approved conditional partnership with Caldera Industries. Terms include mandatory cultural competency training, local advisory board implementation, and 6-month field immersion requirement for executive leadership. Conditional approval. Not rejection. Not endorsement. A test. The kind he might actually fail if he doesn't change. And for the first time all night, Trent Caldera understands the difference between being given a chance and deserving one. Can someone who's never had to learn finally figure out how? The verdict arrives in an email at 6:23 a.m. Trent hasn't slept, hasn't left his penthouse, has spent the entire night reading comments, watching his reputation dissolve, feeling the walls of his carefully constructed empire crack. The subject line is simple: partnership terms, final decision. He opens it, reads, rereads. The investors chose him, but barely. The conditions read like a prison sentence written in corporate language. Executive leadership field immersion. Mr. Caldera will spend a minimum of 6 months working directly in mining communities in Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and Mali. Accommodations will match local standards. Communication will occur in local languages with translation support only for technical terminology. 6 months. Not in hotels. In communities. Cultural competency certification. All Caldera Industries C-suite executives must complete 200 hours of cross-cultural training through an accredited institution. Certification required before operational decisions can proceed. 200 hours. For people who don't have 200 minutes. Local Advisory Board, a 7-member board composed of community representatives, environmental experts, and cultural liaisons will maintain veto power over operational decisions that impact local populations. Veto power. In his own company, quarterly evaluations, independent assessments will be conducted every 90 days for the first 2 years. Failure to meet standards will trigger contract renegotiation or termination. They're putting him on probation. In his own deal, Trent's hands shake as he closes the laptop. His phone rings. Board chair. 7 a.m. on a Sunday. Never good. Did you read it? The chair's voice is flat. I read it. And it's humiliating. It's also the only offer on the table. The chair doesn't soften. The backup consortium already has preliminary approval. If we walk, they step in within 48 hours. We lose everything. So I just accept this? You accept this, or you resign and let someone else run the company. The words hang heavy. Trent stands, walks to his floor-to-ceiling windows, looks out over Manhattan, over the city he conquered, the market he dominated, the world he thought he owned. This wasn't supposed to happen, he says quietly. What wasn't? Any of this. I built this company. I earned this opportunity. I did everything right. Did you? The chair's question is genuine. Because from where I sit, you did everything well except the one thing that mattered most, which is recognizing that people are people, not resources, not labor, not accents to mock. Trent closes his eyes. The board meets in 2 hours. The chair continues. We need a decision. Accept the terms or step aside. I need time. You're out of time, out of chances, out of goodwill. The chair pauses. Trent, I've known you for 8 years. I've watched you build something remarkable, but remarkable doesn't mean right. And tonight, you have to choose who you want to be. The call ends. Trent stands in his penthouse worth $12 million, surrounded by art he purchased but doesn't understand, holding a phone that keeps delivering consequences. And he realizes something. He's terrified, not of losing money. Money can be rebuilt. Not of losing status. Status is temporary. He's terrified of being exposed as someone who confused success with wisdom, who mistook dominance for leadership, who believed that because he won, he was right. Across the city, Zariah wakes in her modest Brooklyn apartment. She makes coffee, checks her email, sees the decision notification, reads the terms, smiles, not with cruelty, with something closer to hope. Because the terms aren't punishment. They're infrastructure. They're the foundation for partnerships that might actually work. She sends a response to the consortium. Terms accepted on your behalf. Implementation resources attached. I'll coordinate logistics for Mr. Caldera's field immersion. Suggested start date, 30 days. Then she does something unexpected. She sends an email to Trent. Direct. Personal. Mr. Caldera, you're probably reading these terms as defeat. I'd encourage you to read them as opportunity. The communities you'll work with have more to teach you than any business school ever did. If you're willing to learn, you might discover that intelligence comes in forms you never recognized. If not, you'll simply confirm what last night suggested. Either way, the choice is yours. ZV. She hits send. Doesn't wait for a response. Goes about her day. At 9 a.m., Trent's board convenes. Virtual meeting. 12 faces on screens. All waiting. The chair speaks first. Trent, you have the floor. Trent looks at the camera. At people who've backed him for years. Who've profited from his vision. Who now question his judgment. I've reviewed the terms, he begins. Everyone waits. And I'm going to accept them. Several board members exhale. But I want to say something first. Trent's voice is steadier now. Last night, I was evaluated by someone I dismissed. Someone whose competence I questioned based on how she sounded rather than what she knew. Someone who could have destroyed this deal in the first hour, but instead gave me chances I didn't deserve. He pauses. I failed that evaluation. Not because I lack business skills, but because I lack humility. And these terms, as difficult as they are, they're forcing me to develop something I should have cultivated years ago. One board member unmutes. Are you saying you're actually going to spend 6 months in West African mining communities? I'm saying I'm going to try. And if I can't handle it, then maybe I'm not the right person to lead this partnership. Another board member speaks. What about the company? 6 months is a long time. Then maybe it's time for this company to learn how to function without me controlling everything. Trent's voice is quiet. Maybe that's part of the problem. The chair nods slowly. All right, we'll vote. All in favor of accepting the partnership terms. 12 hands raise. Unanimous. Motion carries. The chair looks directly at the camera. Trent, you leave in 30 days. Use that time wisely. The meeting ends. Trent sits alone in his home office. Opens Zariah's email. Reads it 3 times. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he doesn't feel defensive. He feels curious. Not about business. Not about deals. About whether someone can actually change after spending their entire life believing they were already right. He types a response. Deletes it. Types another. Deletes that too. Finally settles on something simple. I'll be ready. Hits send. And begins the hardest work of his life. Not building wealth. Building wisdom. What does it cost to admit you were wrong when your entire identity was built on being right? The penthouse sells in 11 days. Trent doesn't need it anymore. Doesn't need the floor-to-ceiling windows or the marble countertops or the view that reminds him of what he thought power looked like. He keeps a studio apartment in Brooklyn. 1 bedroom. Small kitchen. Windows that face a brick wall. It's enough. His podcast goes on indefinite hiatus. The sponsors don't argue. Some drop him entirely. Others wait to see what happens. A few, the ones who actually understand what growth looks like, send messages of support. One email stands out. From Deshaun Harris. The former COO he fired 6 years ago. I don't know if you'll actually change or if this is just performance. But if you're serious, call me. I can help you prepare for what you're about to experience. Trent stares at that email for 3 hours. Then calls. Deshaun answers on the first ring. I wasn't sure you'd actually reach out, Deshaun says. I wasn't sure either. So why did you? Trent exhales slowly. Because I'm terrified. And I think you're the only person who will tell me the truth about what I'm walking into. You want the truth? I need it. The truth is you're about to spend 6 months being the least important person in every room. You're about to work with people who have expertise you don't recognize. You're about to communicate in languages you don't speak. And you're about to discover that everything you thought made you valuable doesn't matter. Silence. And if I can't handle that? Trent asks. Then you come home early and prove everyone right about you. And if I can, then maybe you become someone worth respecting. They talk for 2 hours. Deshaun shares stories. About working in rural communities. About learning to listen instead of lead. About the difference between being useful and being in charge. One more thing, Deshaun says before hanging up. Don't go there to save them. Don't go there to teach them. Go there to learn. If you can't do that, stay home. The call ends. Trent sits in his new studio apartment. surrounded by boxes he hasn't unpacked, holding a phone that just delivered the most honest advice he's received in years. 3 weeks pass. He takes French lessons, 4 hours a day with a tutor from Senegal who doesn't let him get away with lazy pronunciation. He reads books about colonialism, about resource extraction, about communities that survived centuries of people like him taking what they wanted and leaving destruction. He watches documentaries about mining, about environmental damage, about children who work in cobalt mines so American kids can have phones. And slowly, something shifts. Not redemption, not transformation, just the beginning of awareness. On the morning he's scheduled to leave, his mother calls. "Are you really doing this?" she asks. "I am." "Why?" Trent considers the question. "Because I spent my whole life believing that being successful meant I was right. And I just found out I was wrong about almost everything that matters." His mother is quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you. For failing. For admitting it." The flight is 18 hours. New York to Paris. Paris to Dakar. Trent sits in economy. Not because he can't afford business class. Because the terms specify that he travel the same way the workers travel. The man next to him is Senegalese, returning home after visiting family in New Jersey. They talk. The man works in education, teaches mathematics in Dakar, spent 3 weeks in America, and can't wait to get home. "You didn't like it?" Trent asks. "I liked it fine." The man smiles. "But America thinks it's the center of the world. After a while, that gets exhausting." Trent absorbs this. "What takes you to Senegal?" the man asks. "Work. In mining communities." "Oh." The man's expression shifts. "Be careful with that." "Why?" "Because mining companies always promise partnership. They always say it will be different this time. And it never is." "What if I meant it?" The man studies him. "Then you would be the first." They land in Dakar at dawn. The heat hits Trent like a wall. Not uncomfortable, just different. Present. Real. A driver meets him at the airport. Young woman. Mid-20s. Name tag says Aminata. "Mr. Caldera?" She speaks English with a British accent. Educated. Professional. "That's me. I'll take you to the compound. The orientation begins tomorrow." They drive through Dakar, past markets and mosques and buildings that tell stories of French colonialism and African resilience. Trent watches everything, tries to absorb it, realizes he understands almost nothing. The compound isn't what he expected. Not luxury, not poverty, just normal, modest housing, shared facilities, the kind of place where people live, not visit. His room is small. Bed, desk, fan. No air conditioning. He sets down his bag, sits on the bed, and for the first time in his adult life, Trent Caldera has no control over what happens next. No team to manage. No podcast to record. No deals to close. Just 6 months of learning to listen. In languages he doesn't speak. To people he dismissed. In communities he's about to discover he knows nothing about. His phone buzzes. Message from Zariah. "You made it." That's the first step. Now comes the hard part, staying. Trent types a response. Deletes it. Tries again. "I'm here. I'll do the work. Thank you." He hits send. Sets down his phone. And begins the process of becoming someone he should have been all along. Can someone who built everything on being right learn to be wrong? The community elder speaks in Wolof. Trent doesn't understand a word. He's been in Senegal for 4 months. Working in a mining cooperative outside Thies. Living in the same housing as local workers. Eating the same food. Following the same schedules. And slowly, painfully, learning. The elder's name is Ousmane. 73 years old. Survived French colonialism. Watched Chinese corporations extract resources. Buried friends who died in unsafe mines operated by European companies that promised safety. Aminata translates. He says you're doing better. Better than what? Trent asks. Better than the last American who came here thinking he understood. Trent has stopped arguing. Stopped defending. Stopped needing to prove he's smart. Because out here, in communities that mine the minerals that power his world, intelligence looks different. It's knowing which plants signal water sources, It's understanding family structures that support entire villages. It's speaking four languages because survival requires it. It's negotiating with corporations while protecting community interests. These people aren't waiting to be saved. They're already surviving, already innovating, already building futures. They just need partners who see them. Alsmain continues speaking. Aminata translates. He wants to know if you've learned anything. Trent considers this. I've learned that I spent 41 years believing competence sounded like me, and that I missed most of the intelligence in the world because of it. Aminata translates. Alsmain nods slowly. Says something else. He says that's a beginning. Aminata smiles. But beginning is not arriving. 2 weeks later, Trent sits in a community meeting. They're discussing water rights. A mining expansion threatens the local aquifer. The corporation promises modern wells. The community knows promises mean nothing without enforcement. Trent listens. Doesn't speak. Just listens. A young woman stands. She's an engineer. Studied in France. Returned home because her community needed her. She presents data. Water table measurements. Contamination risks. Alternative extraction methods that protect resources. She speaks in French. Then Wolof. Then English. Switching languages to make sure everyone understands. Trent watches her command the room. Watches village elders nod at her expertise. Watches a community make decisions collectively, carefully, with more wisdom than most boardrooms he's sat in. And he realizes something. This is what partnership looks like. Not him teaching them including him. After the meeting, the young engineer approaches. You're the American. Not a question. I am. Aminata says you're different. That you actually listen. I'm trying. Trying is good. She extends her hand. I'm Fatou. They shake. Can I ask you something? Fatou says. Of course. When you go back, and you will go back, what are you going to do differently? Trent doesn't have a prepared answer. Just truth. I'm going to hire people who know more than me. People who speak languages I don't. People who see what I miss. And I'm going to actually listen to them. Fatou considers this. Will your board allow that? If they don't, I'll find new board members. She smiles. Good answer. Month 5. Trent's French is functional now. Not fluent, but enough to have conversations. Enough to understand when he's being talked about versus talked to. His Wolof is basic. Greetings. Courtesy phrases. Enough to show respect. He still makes mistakes. Still says the wrong thing. Still misses cultural cues. But he's learning. And more importantly, he stopped pretending he already knows. One afternoon, he receives an email from Zaraya. They've corresponded throughout his time in Senegal. Brief messages. Professional, but with something underneath. Mutual respect. This email is different. Mr. Caldera, your quarterly evaluation came through. The local advisory board rates your progress as satisfactory with notable improvement. That's high praise from people who've seen a lot of empty promises. I wanted you to know that change, when it's real, gets recognized. Keep going. ZV. Trent reads it 3 times. Then responds. Ms. Valles, thank you. For the evaluation that started this. For the email that kept me going. For seeing capacity when I couldn't see it myself. I'm not the same person who mocked your accent. I hope I'm becoming someone worthy of the chance you gave me. TC. He hits send. And continues his work. Month 6 arrives. Trent's contract completes. The community throws a small gathering. Not a celebration. Just acknowledgement. Alsmain speaks. Aminata translates. You came here thinking you would teach us about business. Instead, we taught you about respect. That is a fair trade. Trent stands. Speaks in French. Imperfect but sincere. Je suis venu ici croyant que je savais tout. J'ai appris que je ne savais rien d'important. Merci de m'avoir appris. I came here believing I knew everything. I learned that I knew nothing important. Thank you for teaching me. Alsmain responds in Wolof. Then switches to English. Now go home. And remember us when you make decisions. Trent flies back to New York. The city looks the same. But he sees it differently now. His company has continued without him. The team he left in charge made decisions. Some good. Some he would have done differently. But they functioned. Because leadership isn't control. It's trust. His first day back, he calls a company-wide meeting. "I'm making changes," he announces, "starting with our hiring practices. We're requiring language diversity in leadership positions. We're implementing cultural competency training for everyone. We're establishing community advisory boards for every international project." Someone raises a hand. "That's going to slow us down." "Good," Trent responds. "Speed without wisdom destroys more than it builds." Another question. What about profitability? Profitability that comes from disrespecting people isn't worth having. The room processes this. It's the same man, but different words. 6 months later, the company announces its first successful rare earth extraction project. In partnership with Senegalese cooperatives. With local advisory board approval. With environmental protections that exceed industry standards. With profit sharing that keeps wealth in communities. It's slower than Trent wanted. More expensive than he planned. And more successful than anything he built before. Because this time, partnership is real. Zoraya watches from a distance. She's consulting for the Department of Commerce now, evaluating partnerships across 3 continents, building the infrastructure that prevents what happened to Trent from happening to others. She receives an invitation. Trent's company is hosting an event, celebrating the Senegal project, honoring community partners, and specifically requesting her presence. She attends. The ballroom is different this time. Fewer chandeliers. More substance. The Senegalese partners are there. Speaking, leading, sharing their perspective. Trent introduces them. Steps back. Lets them own the narrative. And when he sees Zoraya, he approaches. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for the invitation." They stand together. Watching community leaders command respect in a room that once dismissed them. "I never apologized properly," Trent says quietly. "For that night. For what I said." "You did something better," Zoraya responds. "You changed." "I'm still changing." "Good. That means you're learning." They watch the celebration continue. "Can I ask you something?" Trent says. "Always." "Why did you give me a chance?" "After what I did." Zoraya considers this. "Because punishment doesn't create growth. Opportunity does. I didn't want you to fail. I wanted you to learn. There's a difference." "And did I?" "You're still here. Still trying. Still listening." She smiles. "That's more than most people do." The event continues. Partnerships are celebrated. Communities are honored. And in a ballroom that once witnessed humiliation, people who were dismissed now receive the respect they always deserved. Because sometimes the story isn't about revenge. It's about transformation. Not overnight. Not easy. But real. And in rooms built for money, the rarest currency remains character. The kind you earn. One conversation at a time. In languages you took the time to learn. With people you chose to see. What story will you tell about the person you're becoming? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story that inspires. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Let's build a community that grows together.